I'm back at the Plough, one of Devon's most haunted pubs. It's a place I plan returning to soon, in the company of paranormal sleuth Abby Dent, in the hope of making contact with the ghost of an old lady said to haunt this Tamar Valley inn. But tonight, I'm here to read part 2 of Francis Marian Crawford's classic ghost story, The Screaming Skull. Do you recall from part 1 that it's told in the first person, the narrator being an old Liverpudlian sea captain entertaining an old friend at a remote Cornish manor house that he inherited from his cousin. The narrator told his guest that he shares the house with a skull, one he fears belonged to Mrs. Pratt, erstwhile mistress of the house, and who he's come to believe was murdered by her husband Luke. Furthermore, he's to blame for the means of killing her, because the idea, molten lead poured into Mrs. Pratt's ear while she slept, was first suggested to Luke by his own carelessly told tale. The skull, which screams each night, seems to possess intelligence, spite, and a thirst for vengeance. And so we build towards part 2, which is about to get terrifying. I tried sleeping in the best bedroom when I first came to the house, just because it was the best and the most comfortable, but I had to give it up. It was their room, and there's the big bed she died in, and the cupboard is in the thickness of the wall near the head on the left. That's where it likes to be kept, in its bandbox. I only used the room for a fortnight after I came, and I turned out and took the little room downstairs next to the surgery where Luke used to sleep when he expected to be called to a patient during the night. I was always a good sleeper ashore. 8 hours is my dose, 11 to 7 when I'm alone, 12 to 8 when I have a friend with me. But I couldn't sleep after 3 o'clock in the morning in that room, a quarter past to be accurate. As a matter of fact, I timed it with my old pocket chronometer, which still keeps good time. It was always exactly 17 minutes past 3. I wonder whether that was the hour when she died. It wasn't what you've heard though. If it had been that, I could not have stood it 2 nights. It was just a start and a moan and hard breathing for a few seconds in the cupboard, and it could never have waked me under ordinary circumstances, I'm sure. I suppose you're like me in that, and we are just like other people who've been to sea. No natural sounds disturb us at all, not all the racket of a square rigger hove to in a heavy gale, or rolling on our beam ends before the wind. But if a lead pencil gets adrift and rattles in the drawer of your cabin table, you're awake in a moment. Just so, you always understand. Very well, the noise in the cupboard was no louder than that, but it waked me instantly. I said it was like a start. I know what I mean, but it's hard to explain without seeming to talk nonsense. Of course, you can't exactly hear a person start. At the most, you might hear the quick drawing of the breath between the parted lips and closed teeth, and the almost imperceptible sound of clothing that moves suddenly through, though very slightly. It was like that. You know how one feels what a sailing vessel is going to do 2 or 3 seconds before she does it, when one's holding the wheel? Riders say the same of a horse. Well, that's less strange because the horse is a live animal with feelings of its own, and only poets and landsmen speak of ships so. All the same, I felt somehow that, besides being a steaming machine or a sailing machine, a vessel at sea is a sensitive instrument and a means of communication between nature and man, and most particularly the man at the wheel if she's steered by hand. She takes her impressions directly from wind and sea, tide and stream, and transmits them to the man's hand, just as the wireless telegraph picks up the interrupted currents aloft and turns them out below in the form of a message. You see what I'm driving at? I felt that something started in the cupboard, and I felt it so vividly that I heard it, although there may have been nothing to hear, and the sound inside my head waked me suddenly. But I really heard the other noise. It was as if it were muffled inside a box, as far away as if it came through a long-distance telephone, and yet I knew it was inside the cupboard near the head of my bed. No, my hair didn't bristle and my blood didn't run cold that time. I simply resented being waked up by something that had no business to make a noise, any more than a pencil should rattle in the drawer of my cabin table on board ship. But I didn't understand. I just supposed that the cupboard had some communication with the outside air, and that the wind had got in and was moaning through it a sort of very faint screech. I struck a light and looked at my watch, and it was 17 minutes past 3. Then I turned over and went to sleep on my right ear. That's my good one. I'm pretty deaf with the other, for I struck the water of it when I was a lad in diving from the foretopsail yard. Yeah, silly thing to do it was, but the result is very convenient when I want to go to sleep when there's a noise. That was the first night, and the same thing happened again and several times afterward, but not regularly, though it was always at the same time to a second. Perhaps I was sometimes sleeping on my good ear and sometimes not. I overhauled the cupboard, and there was no way by which the wind could get in or anything else, for the door makes a good fit, having been meant to keep out moths, I suppose. Mrs. Pratt must have kept their winter things in it, for it still smells of camphor and turpentine. After about a fortnight, I'd had enough of the noises. So far, I'd said to myself it would be silly to yield to it and take the skull out of the room. Things always look differently by daylight, don't they? But the voice grew louder. I suppose one may call it a voice. And it got inside my deaf ear too one night. I realised that when I was wide awake, for my good ear was jammed down on the pillow, and I ought not to have heard a foghorn in that position. But I heard that, and it made me lose my temper. Unless it scared me, for sometimes the two are not far apart. I struck a light and got up, and I opened the cupboard, grabbed the bandbox and threw it out of the window as far as I could. Then my hair stood on end. The thing screamed in the air like a shell from a 12-inch gun. It fell on the other side of the road. The night was very dark, and I could not see it fall, but I know it fell beyond the road. The window is just over the front door. It's 15 yards to the fence, more or less, and the road is 10 yards wide. There's a quickset hedge beyond, along the glebe that runs to the vicarage. I didn't sleep much more that night. It was not more than half an hour after I'd thrown the bandbox out when I heard a shriek outside, like what we've had tonight, but worse. More despairing, I should call it, and it may have been my imagination, but I could have sworn that the screams came nearer and nearer each time. I lit a pipe, and I walked up and down for a bit, and then I took a book and sat up reading, but I'll be hanged if I can remember what I read, nor even what the book was, for every now and then a shriek came up that would have made a dead man turn in his coffin. A little before dawn, someone knocked at the front door. There was no mistaking that for anything else, and I opened my window and looked down, for I guessed that someone wanted the doctor, supposing that the new man had taken Luke's house. It was rather a relief to hear a human knock after that awful noise. You cannot see the door from above, owing to a little porch. The knocking came again, and I called out asking who was there, but nobody answered, though the knock was repeated. I sang out again and said the doctor doesn't live here any longer. There was no answer, but it occurred to me that it might be some old countryman who was stone deaf. So I took my candle and went down to open the door. Upon my word, I wasn't thinking of the thing yet, and had almost forgotten the other noises. I went down convinced I'd find someone outside on the doorstep with a message. I set the candle on the hall table so the wind shouldn't blow it out when I opened. While I was drawing the old-fashioned bolt, I heard the knocking again. It wasn't loud. It had a queer hollow sound. Now that I was close to it, I remember, but I certainly thought it was made by some person who wanted to get in. It wasn't. There was nobody there. But as I opened the door inward, standing a little on one side so as not to see out at once, something rolled across the threshold and stopped against my foot. I drew back as I felt it, for I knew what it was before I looked down. I cannot tell you how I knew, and it seemed unreasonable, for I'm still quite sure that I'd thrown it across the road. It's a French window that opens wide, and I got a bloody good swing when I flung it out. Besides, when I went out early in the morning, I found the bandbox beyond the thick-set hedge. You may think it opened when I threw it, and that the skull dropped out. That's impossible, for nobody could throw an empty cardboard box so far. It's out of the question. You might as well try to fling a ball of paper 25 yards or a blown bird's egg. I shut and bolted the hall door, picked the thing up carefully and put it on the table beside the candle. I did that mechanically, as one instinctively does the right thing in danger without thinking at all, unless one does the opposite. It may seem odd, but I believe my first thought had been that somebody might come and find me there on the threshold while it was resting against my foot, lying a little on its side and turning one hollow eye up at my face as if it meant to accuse me. And the light and shadow from the candle played in the hollows of the eyes as it stood on the table, so they seemed to open and shut at me. And the candle went out quite unexpectedly, though the door was fastened and there was not the least draught, and I used up at least half a dozen matches before it would burn again. I sat down rather suddenly, without quite knowing why. Probably had been badly frightened, and perhaps you'll admit there was no great shame in being scared. The thing had come home, and it wanted to go upstairs back to its cupboard. I sat still and stared at it for a bit, till I began to feel very cold. I took it and carried it up and set it in its place. And I remember that I spoke to it and promised that it should have its bandbox again in the morning. You want to know whether I stayed in the room till daybreak? Yes, but I kept the light burning and sat up smoking and reading, most likely out of fright, plain undeniable fear, and you need not call it cowardice either, for that's not the same thing. I could not have stayed alone with that thing in the cupboard. I should have been scared to death, though I'm not more timid than any other people. Confound it all, man, it had crossed the road alone and had got up the doorstep and had knocked to be let in. When the dawn came, I put on my boots and went out to find the bandbox. I had to go a good way around, by the gate near the high road, and I found the box open and hanging on the other side of the hedge. It had caught on the twigs by the string, and the lid had fallen off and was lying on the ground below it. That shows it didn't open till it was well over, and if it had not opened as soon as it left my hand, what was inside it must also have gone beyond the road too. That's all. I took the box upstairs to the cupboard and put the skull back and locked it up. When the girl brought me my breakfast, she said she was sorry that she must go and she did not care if she lost her month's wages. I looked at her and her face was a sort of greenish yellowish white. I pretended to be surprised and asked what was the matter, but that was of no use, for she just turned on me and wanted to know whether I meant to stay in a haunted house and how long I expected to live if I did, for though she noticed I was sometimes a little hard of hearing, she didn't believe for 1 minute even I could sleep through those screams again, and if I could, why'd I be moving about the house and opening and shutting the front door between 3 and 4 in the morning? There was no answering that, since she had heard me, so off she went and I was left to myself. I went down to the village during the morning and found a woman who was willing to come and do the little work there is and cook my dinner on condition that she might go home every night. As for me, I moved downstairs that day and I have never tried to sleep in the best bedroom since. After a little while I got a brace of middle-aged Scotch servants from London and things were quiet enough for a long time. I began by telling them the house was in a very exposed position and that the wind whistled around it a good deal in the autumn and winter, which had given it a bad name in the village, Cornish people being inclined to superstition and, telling ghost stories. The two hard-faced, sandy-haired sisters almost smiled, and they answered with great contempt that, let me see if I can put their accent on, They'd no great opinion of any southern bogey whatever, having been in service in 2 English haunted houses, where they'd never seen so much as the boy in grey, whom they reckoned no very particular rarity in Forfarshire. They stayed with me several months, and while they were here in the house we had peace and quiet. One of them's here again now, but she went away with her sister within the year. This one, she was the cook. She married the sexton who works in my garden. That's the way of it. It's a small village and he hasn't much work to do, and he knows enough about flowers to help me nicely, besides doing most of the hard work, for though I'm fond of exercise, I'm getting a little stiff in the hinges. He's a sober, silent sort of fellow who minds his own business, and he was a widower when I came here. Treherne his name is, James Treherne. Now, the Scotch sisters wouldn't admit that there was anything wrong about the house, but when November came, they gave me warning that they were going, on the ground that the chapel was such a long walk from here, being in the next parish, and they couldn't possibly go to our church. But the younger one came back in the spring, and as soon as the banns could be published, she was married to James Treherne by the vicar, and she seems to have had no scruples about hearing him preach since then. Well, I'm quite satisfied if she is. I suppose you're wondering what all this has to do with what I was talking about. I'm alone so much now that when an old friend comes to see me, I sometimes go on talking just for the sake of hearing my own voice. But in this case, there really is a connection of ideas. It was James Treherne who buried poor Mrs. Pratt and her husband after her in the same grave, and it's not far from the back of his cottage. That's the connection in my mind, you see. It's plain enough. He knows something. I'm quite sure he does by his manner, though he's such a reticent bugger. Yes, I'm alone in the house at night now, for Mrs. Treherne does everything herself, and when I've a friend, the sexton's niece comes in to wait on the table. He takes his wife home early evening in winter, but in summer, when there's light, she goes by herself. She's not a nervous woman, but she's less sure than she used to be that there are no bogies in England worth a Scotchwoman's notice. Isn't it amusing, the idea that Scotland has a monopoly on the supernatural? Odd sort of national pride I call that, don't you? That's a good fire, isn't it? When driftwood gets started at last, there's nothing like it, I think. Oh yes, we get lots of it, but I'm sorry to say there's still a great many wrecks about here. It's a lonely coast, and you may have all the wood you want for the trouble of bringing it in. Treherne and I borrow a cart now and then, and load it between here and the spit. I hate a coal fire when I can get wood of any sort. A log's company, even if it's only a piece of a deck beam or timber sawn off, and the salt in it makes pretty sparks. See how they fly, like Japanese hand fireworks. Upon my word, with an old friend and a good fire and a pipe, one forgets all about that thing upstairs, especially now that the wind has moderated. It's only a lull, though, and it'll blow a gale before morning. You think you'd like to see the skull? I've no objection. There's no reason why you shouldn't have a look at it, and you never saw a more perfect one in your life, except there are 2 front teeth missing in the lower jaw. Oh yes, I hadn't told you about the jaw yet. Treherne found it in the garden last spring, when he was digging a pit for a new asparagus bed. You know we make asparagus beds 6 or 8 feet deep here. Yes, I'd forgotten to tell you that. He was digging straight down, just as he digs a grave. If you want a good asparagus bed made, I advise you to get a sexton to make it for you. Those fellows have a wonderful knack at that sort of digging. Treherne had got down about 3 feet when he cut into a mass of white lime in the side of the trench. He'd noticed that the earth was a little looser there, though he says it hadn't been disturbed for a number of years. I suppose he thought that even old lime might not be good for asparagus, so he broke it out and threw it up. It was pretty hard, he says, in biggish lumps, and out of sheer force of habit he cracked the lumps of his spade as they lay outside the pit beside him. The jawbone of a skull dropped out of one of those pieces. He thinks he must have knocked out the 2 front teeth in breaking up the lime, but he didn't see them anywhere. He's a very experienced man in such things, as you may imagine, and he said at once that the jaw had probably belonged to a young woman, and that the teeth had been complete when she died. He brought it to me, and asked me if I wanted to keep it. If I didn't, he said he'd drop it into the next grave he made in the churchyard, as he supposed it was a Christian jaw, and ought to have a decent burial, wherever the rest of the body might be. I told him that doctors often put bones into quicklime to whiten them nicely, and that I suppose Dr. Pratt once had such a lime pit in his garden for that very purpose, then forgot all about the jaw. Traherne looked at me quietly. Begging your pardon, sir, but maybe it fitted that skull what used to be in the cupboard upstairs, he said. Maybe Dr. Pratt put the skull into the lime to clean it or something, and when he took it out he left the lower jaw behind. There's some human hair sticking in the lime, sir. I saw there was, and that was what Traherne said. If he didn't suspect something, why in the world should he have suggested the jaw might fit the skull? Besides, it did. That's proof that he knows more than he cares to tell. Do you suppose he looked before she was buried, or perhaps when he buried Luke in the same grave? Well, it's no use to go over that, is it? I said I'd keep the jaw with the skull, and I took it upstairs and fitted it into its place. There's not the slightest doubt about the two belonging together, and together they are. Traherne knows several things. We were talking about plastering the kitchen a while ago, and he happened to mention it hadn't been done since the very week Mrs. Pratt died. He didn't say that the mason must have left some lime on the place, but he thought it, and that it was the very same lime he'd found in the asparagus pit. Oh, he knows a lot. Traherne is one of your silent buggers who puts two and two together. That grave is very near the back of his cottage too, and he's one of the quickest men with a spade I ever saw. If he wanted to know the truth, he could, and no one else would ever be the wiser unless he chose to tell. In a quiet village like ours, people don't spend the night in the churchyard to see whether the sexton potters about by himself between 10 o'clock and daylight. What's awful to think of is Luke's deliberation. If he did it, his cool certainty that no one would find him out. Above all, his nerve, for that must have been extraordinary. I sometimes think it's bad enough to live in a place where it was done, if it really was done. I always put in the condition, you see, for the sake of his memory, and a little bit for my own sake too. I'll go upstairs and fetch the box in a minute. Let me light my pipe, there's no hurry. We had supper early, and it's only 9:30 o'clock. I never let a friend go to bed before 12, or with less than 3 glasses. You may have as many more as you like, but you shan't have less for the sake of old times. Oh, it's breezing up again, do you hear? That was only a lull just now. We're going to have a bad night. A thing happened that made me start a little when I found the jaw fitted exactly. I'm not very easily startled in that way myself, but I have seen people make a quick movement, drawing their breath sharply when they thought they were alone and suddenly turned and saw someone very near them. Nobody can call that fear. You wouldn't, would you? No, well, just when I had set the jaw in its place under the skull, the teeth closed sharply on my finger. It felt exactly as if it were biting me hard, and I confess I jumped before I realised I'd been pressing the jaw and the skull together with my other hand. I assure you I wasn't at all nervous. It was broad daylight too, and a fine day, and the sun was streaming into the best bedroom. It would have been absurd to be nervous, and it was only a quick mistaken impression, but it really did make me feel queer. Somehow it made me think of the funny verdict of the coroner's jury on Luke's death, by the hand or teeth of some person or animal unknown. Ever since that, I've wished I'd seen those marks on his throat, though the lower jaw was missing then. I've often seen a man do insane things with his hands that he does not realise at all. I once saw a man hanging on by an old awning stock with one hand, leaning backward outboard with all his weight on it, and he was just cutting the stock with the knife in his other hand when I got my arms around him. We were in mid-ocean, going 20 knots. He hadn't the slightest idea what he was doing. Neither had I when I managed to pinch my finger between the teeth of that thing. I can feel it now. It was exactly as if it were alive and were trying to bite me. It would if it could, for I know it hates me. Poor thing. Do you suppose that what rattles about inside it really is a bit of lead? Well, I'll get the box down presently, and if whatever it is happens to drop out into your hands, that's your affair. If it's only a clod of earth or a pebble, the whole matter would be off my mind, and I don't believe I should ever think of the skull again. But somehow I cannot bring myself to shake out the bit of hard stuff myself. The mere idea that it may be lead makes me confoundedly uncomfortable, yet I've got the conviction that I shall know before long. I shall certainly know. I'm sure Traherne knows, but he's such a silent bugger. I'll go upstairs now and get it. What? You'd better go with me. Do you think I'm afraid of a bandbox and a noise? Nonsense. Bother the candle, it won't light. As if the ridiculous thing understood what it's wanted for. Look at that, the third match. They light fast enough for my pipe. There, do you see? It's a fresh box, just out of the tin safe where I keep the supply on account of the dampness. Oh, you think the wick of the candle may be damp, do you? All right, I'll light the beastly thing in the fire. That won't go out at all events. Yes, it sputters a bit, but it will keep lighted now. It burns just like any other candle, doesn't it? The fact is, candles are not very good about here. I don't know where they come from, but they have a way of burning low occasionally with a greenish flame that spits tiny sparks, and I'm often annoyed by their going out of themselves. It cannot be helped, for it will be long before we have electricity in our village. It really is rather a poor light, isn't it? You think I'd better leave you the candle and take the lamp, do you? I don't like to carry lamps about, that's the truth. I never dropped one in my life, but I've always thought I might, and it's so confoundedly dangerous if you do. Besides, I'm pretty well used to these rotten candles by now. You may as well finish that glass while I'm getting it, for I don't mean to let you off with less than 3 before you go to bed. You won't have to go upstairs either, for I put you in the old study next to the surgery. That's where I live myself. The fact is, I never ask a friend to sleep upstairs now. The last man who did was Crackenthorpe, and he said he was kept awake all night. You remember old Crack, don't you? He stuck to the service, and they just made him Admiral. Yes, I'm off now, unless the candle goes out. I couldn't help asking if you remembered Crackenthorpe. If anyone had told us that the skinny little idiot he used to be was to turn out the most successful of the lot, we should have laughed at the idea, shouldn't we? You and I didn't do too badly, it's true, but I'm really going now. I don't mean to let you think I've been putting it off by talking. As if there were anything to be afraid of. If I was scared, I should tell you so quite frankly, and get you to go upstairs with me.
Here's the box. I brought it down very carefully, so as not to disturb it, poor thing. You see, if it was shaken, the jaw might get separated from it again, and I'm sure it wouldn't like that. Yes, the candle went out as I was coming downstairs, but that was the draught from the leaky window on the landing. Did you hear anything? Yes, there was another scream. Am I pale, do you say? A bit out of breath? That's nothing. My heart is a little queer sometimes, and I went upstairs too fast. In fact, that's one reason why I really prefer to live altogether on the ground floor. Wherever that shriek came from, it wasn't from the skull, for I had the box in my hand when I heard the noise, and here it is now, so we have proved definitely that the screams are produced by something else. I've no doubt I shall find out someday what makes them. Some crevice in the wall, of course, or a crack in the chimney, or a chink in the frame of a window. That's the way all ghost stories end in real life. Do you know, I'm jolly glad I thought of going up and bringing it down for you to see, for that last shriek settles a question. To think that I should have been so weak as to fancy that the poor skull could really cry out like a living thing. Now I'll open the box and we'll take it out and look at it under the bright light. It's rather awful to think the poor lady used to sit there in your chair evening after evening in just the same light, isn't it? But then I've made up my mind that it's all rubbish from beginning to end, and it's just an old skull Luke had when he was a student, and perhaps he put it into the lime merely to whiten it and couldn't find the jaw. I made a seal on the string. Do you see? After I put the jaw in its place, and I wrote on the cover, there's the old white label on it still, from a milliner's, addressed to Mrs. Pratt when the hat was sent to her, and as there was room, I wrote on the edge, a skull, once the property of the late Luke Pratt MD. I don't quite know why I wrote that, unless it was with the idea of explaining how the thing happened to be in my possession. I cannot help wondering sometimes what sort of hat it was that came in the bandbox. What colour was it, do you think? Was it a gay spring hat with a bobbing feather and pretty ribbons? Strange that the very same box should hold the head that wore the finery. Perhaps. No, we made up our minds. It just came from the hospital in London where Luke did his time. It's far better to look at it in that light, isn't it? There's no more connection between this skull and poor Mrs. Pratt than there was between my story about the lead. Good Lord. Take the lamp, don't let it go out if you can help it. I'll have the window fastened again in a second. I say, what a gale. There, it's out. I told you so. Never mind, there's the firelight. I've got the window shut. The bolt was only half down. Was the box blown off the table? Where the deuce is it? There. That won't open again, for I've put up the bar. Good dodge, an old-fashioned bar. There's nothing like it. Now, you find the bandbox while I light the lamp. Confound these wretched matches. Yes, a pipe spill is better. It must lighten the fire. I hadn't thought of that. Thank you. There we are again. Now, where is the box? Yes, put it back on the table and we'll open it. That's the first time I've ever known the wind to burst that window open. But it was partly carelessness on my part when I last shut it. Yes, of course I heard the scream. It seemed to go all round the house before it broke in at the window. That proves that it's always been the wind and nothing else, doesn't it? When it was not the wind, it was my imagination. I've always been a very imaginative man. I must have been, though I didn't know it. As we grow older, we understand ourselves better, don't you know? I'll have a drop of the Scotch neat, by way of an exception since you're filling up your glass. That damp gust chilled me, and with my rheumatic tendency, I'm very much afraid of a chill, for the cold sometimes seems to stick in my joints all winter when it once gets in. By George, that's good stuff. I'll just light a fresh pipe now that everything is snug again, and then we'll open the box. I'm so glad we heard that last scream together, with the skull here on the table between us, for a thing cannot possibly be in two places at the same time, and the noise most certainly came from outside, as any noise the wind makes must. You thought you heard it scream through the room after the window was burst open? Yes, so did I, but that was natural enough when everything was open. Of course we heard the wind, what could you expect? Look here, please. I want you to see that the seal is intact before we open the box together. Will you take my glasses? No, you have your own. All right. The seal is sound, you see, and you can read the words of the motto easily. Sweet and low, that's it, because the poem goes on, wind of the western sea, and says, blow him again to me, and all that. Here's the seal on my watch chain, where it's hung for more than 40 years. My poor little wife gave it to me when I was courting, and I never had any other. It was just like her to think of those words. She was always fond of Tennyson. It's of no use to cut the string, for it's fastened to the box, so I'll just break the wax and untie the knot, and afterwards we'll seal it up again. You see, I like to feel the thing is safe in its place and that nobody can take it out. Not that I should suspect Traherne of meddling with it, but I always feel he knows a lot more than he tells. You see, I've managed it without breaking the string, though when I fastened it, I never expected to open the bandbox again. The lid comes off easily enough. There, now look. What? Nothing in it? Empty? It's gone, man! The skull is gone! No, there's nothing the matter with me. I'm only trying to collect my thoughts. It's so strange. I'm positively certain it was inside when I put on the seal last spring. I can't have imagined that. It's utterly impossible. Now, if ever I took a stiff glass with a friend now and then, I'd admit I might have made some idiotic mistake when I'd taken too much. But I don't, and I never did. A pint of ale at supper and half a go of rum at bedtime was the most I ever took in my good days. It's always we sober fellows who get rheumatism and gout. Yet there was my seal, and there's the empty bandbox. That's plain enough. I say I don't half like this. It's not right. There's something wrong about it, in my opinion. You needn't talk to me about supernatural manifestations. I don't believe in them, not a little bit. Somebody must have tampered with the seal and stolen the skull. Sometimes, when I go out to work in the garden in summer, I leave my watch and chain on the table. Traherne must have taken the seal then and used it, for he'd be quite sure that I shouldn't come in for at least an hour. If it wasn't Traherne... Oh, don't talk to me about the possibility the thing has got out by itself. If it has, it must be somewhere about the house, in some out-of-the-way corner, waiting. We may come upon it anywhere, waiting for us, don't you know? Just waiting in the dark. Then it'll scream at me. It'll shriek at me in the dark, for it hates me, I tell you. The bandbox is empty. We're not dreaming, either of us. There, I turn it upside down. What's that? Something fell out as I turned it over. It's on the floor. It's near your feet. I know it is. Here, we'll find it. Help me to find it, man. Have you got it? For God's sake, give it to me quickly. Lead! I knew it when I heard it fall. I knew it couldn't be anything else by the little thud it made on the hearth rug. So it was lead after all, and Luke did it. I feel a bit shaken up. Not exactly nervous, you know, but badly shaken up, that's the fact. Anybody would, I should think. After all, you can't say that it's fear of the thing, for I went up and brought it down. At least I believed I was bringing it down, and that's the same thing, and by George, rather than give in to such silly nonsense, I'll take the box upstairs again and put it back in its place. It's not that. It's the certainty that poor little woman came to her end in that way, by my fault because I told that stupid story. That's what's so dreadful. Somehow, I'd always hoped that I should never be quite sure of it, but there's no doubting it now. Look at that. Little lump of lead with no particular shape. Think of what it did, man. Doesn't it make you shiver? He gave her something to make her sleep, of course, but there must have been one moment of awful agony. Think of having boiling lead poured into your brain. Think of it! She was dead before she could scream, but only think of... Oh, there it is again! It's just outside. I know it's just outside. I can't keep it out of my head. Oh! Oh! You thought I'd fainted. I wish I had, for it would have stopped sooner. It's all very well saying it's only a noise, and that a noise never hurt anyone. You're as white as a shroud yourself. There's only one thing to be done if we hope to close an eye tonight. We must find it and put it back into its bandbox, and shut it up in the cupboard where it likes to be. I don't know how it got out, but it wants to get in again. That's why it screamed so awfully tonight. It was never so bad as this, and never since I first... Bury it? Yes, if we can find it, we'll bury it. If it takes us all night, we'll bury it 6 feet deep and ram the earth down over it so it shall never get out again. And if it screams, we shall hardly hear it so deep down. Quick, we'll get the lantern and look for it. It cannot be far away. I'm sure it's just outside. It was coming in when I shut the window. I know it. Yes, you're quite right. I'm losing my senses and I must get hold of myself. Don't speak to me for a minute or two. I'll sit quite still and keep my eyes shut and repeat something I know. That's the best way. Add together the altitude, the latitude and the polar distance. Divide by 2 and subtract the altitude from the half sum. Then add the logarithm of the secant of the latitude, the cosecant of the polar distance, the cosine of the half sum and the sine of the half sum minus the altitude. There. Don't say I'm out of my senses. My memory's all right, isn't it? Of course, you might say it's mechanical and that we never forget the things we learnt when we were boys and have used almost every day for a lifetime. But that's the very point. When a man's going crazy, it's the mechanical part of his mind that gets out of order and won't work right. He remembers things that never happened, or he sees things that aren't real, or he hears noises when there is perfect silence. That's not what is the matter with either of us, though, is it? Come, we'll get the lantern and go round the house. It's not raining, only blowing like old boots, as we used to say. The lantern's in the cupboard under the stairs in the hall, and I always keep it trimmed in case of a wreck. No use to look for the thing. I don't see how you can say that. It was nonsense to talk of burying it, of course, but it doesn't want to be buried. It wants to go back into its bandbox and be taken upstairs, poor thing. Traherne took it out, I know, and made the seal over again. Perhaps he took it to the churchyard, and he may have meant well. I dare say he thought it wouldn't scream anymore if it were quietly laid in consecrated ground, near where it belongs. But it's come home. Yes, that's it. He's not half a bad fellow, Traherne, and rather religiously inclined, I think. Does not that sound natural and reasonable and well meant? He supposed it screamed because it wasn't decently buried with the rest. But he was wrong. How should he know that it screams at me because it hates me and because it's my fault there was that little lump of lead in it? No use to look for it anyhow. Nonsense. I tell you, it wants to be found. Hark! What's that? Knocking? It's got a hollow sound, hasn't it? It's come home. I've heard that knock before. It wants to come in and be taken upstairs in its box. It's at the front door. Will you come with me? We'll take it in. Yes, I own that I don't like to go alone and open the door. The thing will roll in and stop against my foot, just as it did before, and the light will go out. I'm a good deal shaken by finding that bit of lead. And besides, my heart isn't quite right. Too much strong tobacco, perhaps. Besides, I'm quite willing to own that I am a bit nervous tonight, if I never was before in my life. That's right, come along. I'll take the box with me so as not to come back. Do you hear the knocking? It's not like any other knocking I ever heard. If you will hold this door open, I can find the lantern under the stairs by the light from this room without bringing the lamp into the hall. It would only go out. The thing knows we're coming. Hark! It's impatient to get in. Don't shut the door till the lantern is ready, whatever you do. There will be the usual trouble with the matches, I suppose. No, the first one, by Jove. I tell you, it wants to get in, so there's no trouble. All right with the door now. Shut it, please. Now come and hold the lantern, for it's blowing so hard outside I shall have to use both hands. That's it. Hold the light low. Do you hear the knocking still? Here goes. I'll open just enough with my foot against the bottom of the door now. That's it. It's only the wind that blows it across the floor. That's all. There's half a hurricane outside, I tell you. Have you got it? The bandbox is on the table. 1 minute, I'll have the bar up. There. Why did you throw it into the box so roughly? It doesn't like that, you know. What did you say? Bitten your hand? Nonsense, man. You did just what I did. You pressed the jaws together with your other hand and pinched yourself. Let me see. You don't mean to say you have drawn blood? You must have squeezed hard, by Jove, for the skin's certainly torn. I'll give you some carbolic solution for it before we go to bed, for they say a scratch from a skull's tooth may go bad and give trouble. Come inside again and let me see it by the lamp. I'll bring the bandbox. Never mind the lantern. It may as just as well burn in the hall, for I shall need it presently when I go up the stairs. Yes, shut the door if you will. It makes it more cheerful and bright. Is your finger still bleeding? I'll get you the carbolic in an instant. Just let me see the thing. Oh, there's a drop of blood on the upper jaw. It's on the eye tooth. Ghastly, isn't it? When I saw it running along the floor of the hall, the strength almost went out of my hands, and I felt my knees bending. Then I understood that it was the gale, driving it over the smooth boards. You don't blame me? No, I should think not. We were boys together, and we've seen a thing or two, and we may just as well own to each other that we were both in a beastly funk when it slid across the floor at you. No wonder you pinched your finger picking it up after that. If I did the same thing out of sheer nervousness in broad daylight with the sun streaming in on me. Strange that the jaw should stick to it so closely, isn't it? I suppose it's the dampness, for it shuts like a vice. I've wiped off the drop of blood. It wasn't nice to look at. I'm not going to try to open the jaws, don't be afraid. I shall not play any tricks with the poor thing, but I'll just seal the box again and we'll take it upstairs and put it away where it wants to be. The wax is on the writing table by the window, thank you. It'll be long before I leave my seal lying about again for Traherne to use, I can tell you. Explain? I don't explain natural phenomena, but if you choose to think that Traherne had hidden it somewhere in the bushes, and that the gale blew it to the house against the door and made it knock as if it wanted to be let in, you're not thinking the impossible, and I'm quite ready to agree with you. Do you see that? You can swear that you've actually seen me seal it this time, in case anything of the kind should occur again. The wax fastens the string to the lid, which cannot possibly be lifted even enough to get in one finger. You're quite satisfied, aren't you? Yes. Besides, I shall lock the cupboard and keep the key in my pocket hereafter. Now, we can take the lantern and go upstairs. Do you know, I'm very much inclined to agree with your theory the wind blew it against the house. I'll go ahead, for I know the stairs. Just hold the lantern near my feet as we go up. How the wind howls and whistles. Did you feel the sand on the floor under your shoes as we crossed the hall? Yes, this is the door of the best bedroom. Hold up the lantern, please. This side, by the head of the bed. I left the cupboard open when I got the box. Isn't it queer how the faint odours of women's dresses will hang about an old closet for years? This is the shelf. You see me set the box there, and now you see me turn the key and put it into my pocket. It's done. Good night. Are you sure you're quite comfortable? It's not much of a room, but I dare say you would as soon sleep here as upstairs tonight. If you want anything, sing out. There's only a lath and plaster partition between us. There's not so much wind on this side by half. Look, there's the Scotch on the table. If you want, have one more nightcap. No? Well, do as you please. A good night again, and don't dream about that thing if you can. You know, I wish I could tell you that was the end of the story, the end of our sea captain's struggles and suffering. Yet the following paragraph appeared in the Penradden News, 23rd November 1906, under the headline, Mysterious Death of a Retired Sea Captain. The village of Treadcombe is much disturbed by the strange death of Captain Charles Braddock, and all sorts of impossible stories are circulating with regard to the circumstances. which certainly seemed difficult to explain. The retired captain, who successfully commanded in his time the largest and fastest liners belonging to one of the principal transatlantic steamship companies, was found dead in his bed on Tuesday morning in his own manor house, a quarter of a mile from the village. An examination was made at once by the local practitioner, which revealed the horrible fact the deceased had been bitten in the throat by a human assailant with such amazing force as to crush the windpipe and cause death. The marks of the teeth of both jaws were so plainly visible on the skin they could be counted, but the perpetrator of the deed had evidently lost the two lower middle incisors. It's hoped this peculiarity may help to identify the murderer, who can only be a dangerous, escaped maniac. The deceased, though over 65 years of age, is said to have been a hale man of great physical strength, so it's remarkable that no signs of any struggle were visible in the room, nor could it be ascertained how the murderer entered the house. Warning has been sent to all the insane asylums in the United Kingdom, but as yet, no information has been received regarding the escape of any dangerous patient. The coroner's jury returned the somewhat singular verdict that Captain Braddock came to his death by the hands or teeth of some person unknown. The local surgeon said to have expressed privately the opinion the maniac is a woman, a view he deduced from the small size of the jaws, as shown by the marks of the teeth. The whole affair is shrouded in mystery. Captain Braddock was a widower and lived alone. He leaves no children.